one piece of advice I'd give is focus on three things: skill sets, character traits, and beliefs. Those are the three biggest things that make an impact to the entrepreneur, because as the entrepreneur and the business owner, you are responsible for that business's growth. Like, not the people you hire, not this, not that. It's the skill sets, beliefs, and character traits that you have as the entrepreneur that allows that asset to grow. And so I think it's really important to work on those three and level them up together. Because if you're lacking in one area, like, you might have all of the right skill sets, but not the beliefs to actually follow through and do it. So like, it has to align in that way where you're not capped at a certain level because your beliefs are lacking behind or your character traits are lacking behind. So definitely work on those.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Tom Wedding. And as a quick introduction to Tom, so his journey started by dropping out of high school, decided he'd rather do an apprenticeship, did the apprenticeship or started it, decided that he hated that, but he did love air acrobatics. And so he met some guy, or I can't remember, it was one guy or a couple of guys, started a crew, did street performing for about 3 years. And that sounds just like or every movie that I've ever seen about or dancing, which looks awesome. And I love those movies. So, but then he tore his ACL, couldn't perform anymore. So had to kind of go back and figure out what he's going to do. Tried a few different online businesses and then started a marketing agency to help local businesses with marketing. Started a coaching business or to help people run agencies, and also started doing some things with the LinkedIn services. So with that much as introduction, welcome on the podcast, Tom.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Excited for a good conversation. So with that, I took a 30-second or a longer journey and packed it into the 30-second version. So let's unpack it a bit. So tell us about how your journey got started, deciding you didn't want to go to high school anymore and were going to drop out and do something else.
Yeah, so obviously out of high school, dropped out, and my mom made me get an apprenticeship because, like, obviously you have to have some kind of income coming in. And so, yeah, I kind of got forced into that and just hated it. You know, I hated the long hours, getting paid an hourly wage. It was like $11 an hour or something. And I just couldn't really like survive that way. And so, yeah, at the time I'd been doing acrobatics for like 5 or so years. And so I was pretty good at it. Just
one quick question before we get into acrobatics, just I had one right off the chute or out of the chute, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But what was the apprenticeship for? Because you said, okay, go, you out of high school, don't want to do that, makes sense. But I would probably be the same parent saying, you're not going to finish high school, you're going to figure out a way that you're going to be able to pay the bills, and apparently that's going to be apprenticeship. So I commend your parents for or at least guiding you in that direction. But what was the apprenticeship that you started out in?
Yeah, so the apprenticeship was for sign writing. So basically putting up all the neon signs and, you know, stickers, putting vinyl wraps on cars and stuff like that. So that was what it was for. It's pretty fun. But yeah, just the long hours, the lack of pay, like, wasn't for me. I just wanted more freedom, I guess. I wanted more freedom in my life. And yeah, so it was kind of chance. Like, I quit that apprenticeship with no other options. I was like, I just know I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I'm quitting now. And it was kind of a stroke of luck that I bumped into this American guy who'd come over to Australia. And he'd been doing street performing over in New York. And he showed us some of the videos, and we were like, me and my best friend, we were like, wow, this is so sick. Like, this is awesome. Like, you get paid to do this. He's like, yeah, sure do. And so he's like, yeah, why don't we start up a crew? We'll like go out and do this in Melbourne. And so that's what we did. We got a crew of 4 together, and we went out the first time on a weekend, and me and my best friend, and I think it was 2 other guys as well. And yeah, we went out, performed the whole day in front of these awesome crowds. And like, me and my friend, we loved acrobatics, right? We've been doing it for like 5 or so years. We were happy just to be out there in front of the crowds, like getting recognition basically for this skill that we'd focus so much energy on. And yeah, it was just felt amazing, like being in front of people. And at the end of the day, this American guy hands us both $40. And we're like, at that point, we weren't expecting to get paid. We were just doing it because it was fun. And we were freaking out. Me and my best friend were like, that was kind of like the pivotal moment, you know. It's like, okay, I can make money not from an hourly wage, you know, and that was kind of like the breakthrough. And so it was really interesting, like after that moment, just how I started to look at money. Like I didn't look at money as an hourly wage or you know, have to get paid through a job, but I started looking at money as an exchange of value. That was all it was. And so that kind of shift really helped me to yeah, turn street performing into a career for 3 years. And
Now,
I'm
one question on that, because the only thing I guess I know two things about street performing, which is very little. One is what I've seen when I go out, go to like a New York or somewhere, or California, and there's street performers. And the only other thing I know about street performing is all the movies that I see that are always fun. And they usually have a very similar thing to where they try and get into a dance studio where they have to go do community service. And then there's a love story somewhere intertwined with that. They get rejected, but then at the end, they're vindicated and they win whatever championship or prove whatever point. I have a sneaky suspicion it's maybe not quite like that, but maybe you could tell me that is exactly like the movie. So how close is life as a street performer to what we see in the movies?
Yeah, so basically what street performing kind of is you get out onto the street and you find ways to draw a crowd in around you. And then basically from there you do your show, right? And so your show will have a bit of structure. You have like an intro, you start, you have some comedy jokes in there, and you've got like a bit of a structure to the show. So like one of the stunts that we do at the end of the show is we get 4 people from the audience or 5 people from the audience to line up. And then we pretend like we're going to go flip over them. But then we get them to bend over. And there's a bunch of jokes and stuff and things like that. Like you have a males like lined up, and then you put a female in the middle, and then you're like, okay, squeeze together, guys. And then like when the guy gets too close to the female, you're like, yeah, not too close, not too close. So just little things like that. And then yeah, we get them to bend over at the end and then flip over them, and that's kind of the last big stunt. But yeah, overall it's pretty straightforward, I guess. Each show we would do goes for about like 30 minutes. But for a lot of the other bigger crews, they do like hour-long shows and they make a lot of money.
So now, and that's that you hit on one of the other questions. So first of all, so I'll take that as it sounds at least a little bit like the movies are kind of fun, but I'm guessing not quite as much drama and probably not quite as much of a love story typically. But now you say one of the other things, it's just kind of an aside, but find it interesting because I was always curious. If you're a good street performer, because you see them not everywhere, but you see ones and where a lot of tourists are, where a lot of people are. And if you're a good street performer, how much is a good day's take and how much is a bad day's take?
Yeah, so I used to make about $800 to $1,000 per day. But keep in mind we could only perform Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, so that's only 3 days a week. But yeah, that was pretty much what we did every single week. I think our best week made $1,200 in one day.
Yeah, so let's say $1,000 a day, 3 days a week, so that's a 3,000 a week. That's what, 12,000 a month. That's not a bad pay for going and doing street performing.
Yeah, you actually make quite a lot on the street. It's interesting. The sucky thing is when it's winter or it's raining and there's not people out. So it's good and bad, There's obviously positives and negatives to everything. But the bigger crews, like there was a crew performing that I think they had like 7 or 8 people in the crew. And they would make $1,000 per show. So every hour they were outperforming, they made $1,000. Now they had to split that between like a bunch of different people, but yeah, that would really rake it in, like get people to give $100 notes and stuff. It was kind of crazy to watch.
Interesting. Well, if nothing else, I find they're very interesting, even if it's not quite, or even if it interrupts a bit of your journey. So I just had to take the opportunity to ask a couple of questions I'd always been wondering. So now you'd been doing street performing. You did it for about 3 years. Sounds like you were enjoying it. And through no desire to stop doing it, you ended up tearing your ACL. Is that right?
Yeah, sure did. So I had to get knee surgery. It sucked. I was couldn't walk for like a whole month. So that was really horrible. And I had the choice, I guess. I was like, okay, cool. Like I could be all depressed and sad about this and like hate my life, or I can try and do something else. And so that's what I did. And that's when I just, discovered online business. I'm like, well, if I can make money on the street, surely I can make money online, surely. And so the first thing I tried.
If I can make money on the streets, online is going to be much easier.
That's it. So yeah, first thing I started was a clothing brand. I bought like $8,000 worth of stock and never sold any of it, which was pretty bad. And then tried drop shipping. It sold 1 pair of shoes. That was it. And then from drop shipping, I went into a couple other things like affiliate marketing and all these other weird stuff. And then eventually I stumbled across the agency model and I was like, hey, this sounds kind of cool. And so I bought into a $12,000 course and I was like, okay, cool. This is going to be it. This is the thing that I'm going to blow up. And so I was working like, 10 hours per day, just really trying to make this work. And the model that they were teaching was called rank and rent. And so what that it means is like you basically build these little websites, rank them on Google, and then when they start getting leads coming in because people are searching for things, you send those leads to a local business owner, right? So you might build a site for painting in Oregon, and then that site would start producing painting leads that you can send to a painter. And so that's kind of what I did. I built like 25 or so sites, but I really sucked at getting them to rank on Google. So I couldn't really get any of these sites to rank. And at the time, I was actually running ads for myself to find myself clients, and we were booking so many calls, like more calls than I can handle. And at the time, I was like, I think I was 18 or something. So I was horrible at sales. I had no idea what I was doing on the phone. Everyone just thought they were talking to a kid. I probably hadn't even had my voice break yet. So everyone was just like, who's this kid on the phone trying to sell me something? So definitely struggled with sales there. And but we're really good at booking those calls, right? So I had an idea. I'm like, and it happened like after. So I was working these like 10, 12-hour days, just really trying to make this work. And one night I had passed out, hit my head, and I woke up in hospital. And I had no recollection of that night at all, what happened. And so that was a very scary moment. It was kind of a shock. It was like, okay, I can't be doing this way. There has to be an easier way. And so that's when I kind of started looking at delegation and automation and stuff like that. And really started to hire out a lot of the tasks that I was doing to VAs and really got good at that as a skill set, which has helped me massively as I've gone on to other ventures. Because I think that's something as you level up as an entrepreneur, you need to take on some of those skill sets that are more kind of remove yourself from the business in a way. Because that's a very important part of having something that's actually an asset and it's tangible, as opposed to just something that sits there and it's like, you have to be there for it to operate, and that's something I've noticed over time. But yeah, so
No, I think that's
yeah.
awesome, and I do think that there is a different skill. There's a lot of different skill sets. You see an online business, and it can be everything to everybody thinks you're going to be a drop shipper, or all you do is put up a store, and magically people are going to find it and start giving you money. It's not the case, but just as equally, just because you can drive traffic doesn't mean you're good at converting, or you're good at or doing the sales aspect, or giving people confidence. And just because you're good at sales and converting people once you talk to them doesn't mean you have an easy time finding them. So I think that there's a lot of things that is interesting, and kind of how you figured out what you were good at and where you focus, and then and what that meant, and then also start to how you delegate that, and how you to start to be able to expand it or to grow, so it's not solely or on you all the time. So definitely sounds like a fun journey. So now do you start, and when did you start the agency that you're currently doing now?
So I don't run the agency anymore. But that I was running for a little bit. But what I realized was, okay, I suck at sales here. But what I'm really good at is booking these calls, like getting clients on the phone. I'm amazing at the lead generation. So what I decided to do, I was like, well, hey, I should just focus on what I'm good at. And so what I did was I turned that information that I had on how to run ads to find more clients for an agency owner, and I turned it into a course. And I launched it for $97 just to my Facebook list, made one post about it. And that was $97 course that I launched because I had no idea how to price it. I'm like, oh, $97, whatever, sure. And it's just kind of the random price tag you pick, So I launched that onto my Facebook list and just posted one post. And that I think made close to $3,000 in 24 hours just from people I had on my list. So that was kind of like affirmation, like, hey, this could work. Maybe I could be a course creator. And so I started like really pushing that. I increased the price, and that kind of grew over time. And I just kept selling that and selling that. And so the agency kind of got put on the wayside, and I didn't really focus too much energy on that. And so, yeah, kind of shut down the agency, went all in on this course. And then eventually I was like, okay, how can I add more value to this? So I was like, okay, let's turn it into a coaching program now. At the time, I didn't realize like that's going to take so much of my energy and my time. Like that's not what I wanted to do. But yeah, I did that for about a year, turned that into a 6-figure business. But it relied on me, I had to be there for it to operate. And so that was kind of like when got to the end of 2023, I was like, oh, wait, we had a 6-figure year. This is sick. Like, this is awesome. It actually worked. But then I looked at how many hours I was putting in. I'm like, probably didn't make too much sense. And
I
so
know it's a
then,
big figure, but if I were to break that down to hourly, that make it minimum wage. No, I mean, but no, there is a lot of times when you're doing it and you start to add it up saying, this is maybe I'm making a decent wage but I'm having to put in a ton of hours, or it's not the lifestyle I want, or it doesn't line up or doesn't make sense. And so it sounds like that you're at. So now as you're figuring that out, kind of what was the next step, or how did you figure out? So you found first of all, found something you're good at, tore an ACL, went through several businesses, found out what you weren't good at, but also what you were good at, started building that up, got some income, but then you're saying, maybe this isn't what I want to do. So how did you kind of figure out what was the next step for you?
yes, the next step for me was like, so I built that whole 6-figure business, coaching business through one Facebook group. And so I was like, oh, maybe this is like the next progression for me, is like teaching people how to run Facebook groups. And so that's what I did. I started a coaching program for that, for helping people to grow and monetize their Facebook groups. And that worked fairly well at the start. But again, it was coaching. And so I was like, what if I can turn this into a service-based business now? And so I looked at, okay, cool. Instead of coaching people on how to do this, what if we did it for them? And so that's really what we transitioned to do. And so using my skill set I had of hiring and getting VAs in place, I managed to get a team in place to do this, like outsourcing, to basically grow and manage people's groups for them. And so that's what we did. Managed to get a couple of really good clients. We got a couple of startups. And I've noticed that like working with startups compared to like, one-man bands is like so much better. They're just such easier clients to work with because they've usually got a team behind them. They're more organized. They're actually committed to the vision. They have like a stronger why and a vision for the business, and so that's a lot easier to incorporate into your service when you're providing it. So that's kind of where I got to. And yeah, whole 2021 was just spent really building that service, that Facebook group management service. And that kind of leads us up to today. I mean, yeah, I built that business to a point where I was only working about 4 hours a week on client work. So I actually like built something that I wanted to build, which is giving me freedom. That's kind of why I started online business, and I finally got there in 2021. And so yeah, that's kind of where I guess I'm at today, although I'm transitioning to a new thing now. But yeah, that's kind of the journey, I guess.
Oh, that's awesome. That was a fun journey to hear, and definitely is kind of always interesting to see kind of what is the path that leads you to where you're at today. So with that, now as we've kind of reached the present day or part of your journey, it's always a good time to transition to the 2 questions I ask at the end of each episode. Now, for those that are listening, we are doing one of the bonus questions, which is we're going to talk a little bit about Tom's craziest idea, or a crazy entrepreneurial idea that he has. So if you want to hear that conversation, make sure to stay tuned after the episode wraps up. If you don't want to hear any crazy ideas, then you can just hear the last 2 questions and then go about the rest of your day. So just as a heads up on that. But before we get to the crazy idea, the normal last 2 questions I asked, we'll jump to those now. First question is along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I made one recently. I invested into a funnel builder, which cost me $5,000, and they did a horrible job. Copywriting was terrible. Everything was terrible. And so, yeah, I couldn't get a refund for that. So that was a bit of a big mistake. And that, I guess, kind of the lesson from that is don't hire out something just to get rid of it, right? Hire out something that needs to be systemized or delegated. And so I think what I did there was I tried to offload it. I was like, I don't want to do this, like offload it, instead of like really focusing on, okay, what am I actually looking for? Does this need to be outsourced? Do I have to pay $5,000 to have this done, or can I build my own team for this? So that's probably one of the biggest lessons, is just making investments that didn't make sense at the time. I've done that a couple times, buying programs I didn't need, buying coaches I didn't need. Because yeah, you most of the time you already have everything you really kind of need in front of you. It's nice to have that little helping hand. And if you're totally lost and if you're stuck on something, having a coach is just invaluable to have. But yeah, I think most of the time, a lot of us, we just forget what's in front of us, and we focus like 20 years in the future, and we're like, oh my gosh, like I need to have this, this, and this. I need to have everything set up now. And you just rush everything. So I think it's a bit more patience. And again, that comes down to the character traits you have as an entrepreneur, bit of patience, bit of discipline to see it through. So yeah, I'd say that's the biggest lesson.
No, I like that one. And I think that you hit on it. There are several things, but one of the things that is hard is most startups, not all of them, but a lot of start with maybe one or two people, maybe you and a founder or co-founder type of a thing. And as you get going, whether it's yourself or a couple people, one is you want to sometimes you'll have the inclination, you want to get going as quickly as you can. And that requires you bringing on a whole bunch of people. Or two, you're saying, hey, I want to delegate all the things that I hate, but you never really think about, or the thing you hate or don't want to do, but you never really think about, one, should this be delegated? Two, do we have the bandwidth or the time? Are you going to be able to train the person? Are we going to make sure it's done right? Are we doing it the right thing? And sometimes you just want to jump the gun because you want to either build it faster than it should be built, or you want to or focus on the areas that are fun for you, but and offload those other things. And all of those things, while there's good motivations for them, oftentimes can create mistakes or issues that you then learn from. So I think that's a great takeaway. Second question is, if you're talking now to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Yeah, one piece of advice I'd give is focus on three things: skill sets, character traits, and beliefs. Those are the three biggest things that make an impact to the entrepreneur, because as the entrepreneur and the business owner, you are responsible for that business's growth. Like, not the people you hire, not this, not that. It's the skill sets, beliefs, and character traits that you have as the entrepreneur that allows that asset to grow. And so I think it's really important to work on those three and level them up together. Because if you're lacking in one area, like, you might have all of the right skill sets, but not the beliefs to actually follow through and do it. So like, it has to align in that way where you're not capped at a certain level because your beliefs are lacking behind or your character traits are lacking behind. So definitely work on those and work out which ones you actually want to work on first. Like, I say character traits and people like, what character traits, work that out. You need to know, okay, where am I going? What are the character traits that I need? What is the person I need to become to actually build this thing? So that's what I would say is the very important thing to focus on.
I think that's a great piece of advice and definitely a great takeaway. So, well, with that, before we dive to the bonus question, as we're wrapping up the normal or portion of the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
I'm always on Facebook. I basically live on there. So you can hit me on there. That's probably the best way to reach out. So facebook.com/WOMTED, WOMTED. That's, I believe, my profile link, I think. Yeah, that's where you can hit me up.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to hit you up, make a connection, use your services, and if nothing else, find a new best friend. And so with that, well, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the show, we'd love to have you. So let's go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Also, as a listener, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review, because we want to make sure that everyone finds out about all these awesome episodes. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Well, with that, now as we've wrapped up the normal portion of the podcast, it's always fun to do the bonus questions. And one of the bonus questions that we hit on is, it's always fun if you're an entrepreneur, anything like me, you always have more ideas than you're going to ever pursue. And you always have, a whole bunch of ideas throughout the day. Most of them are probably terrible and you probably shouldn't pursue them, but some of them is fun. It's always great to hear and share a bit of an ideas. So with that, you mentioned you had a crazy idea that you thought would be fun to pursue someday. So share some or tell us a little bit about what that idea is.
Yeah. So funnily enough, I heard this somewhere and it was kind of like divine timing, I guess, because I was answering the question of like, what's your crazy idea? And I was like, oh, hey, I thought of this the other day. I didn't have the idea. I saw it somewhere. A couple of people were talking about it.
Stole the idea, but it's okay because it wasn't patented. So go
ahead. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the idea is basically having entrepreneurship baby showers, so same kind of idea as a baby shower, like someone new who's getting into business goes to an entrepreneurial baby shower of them starting their business, and they get all these gifts like marketing resources and this and that and SOPs and whatever. So that's the idea I had. I think it'd be pretty cool, like help people out who are starting up.
No, I like it. And I mean, and I like the idea because really you're saying, okay, what's the point of baby showers? Well, one, it's just to celebrate something that's fun and, exciting for the couple that's having a baby. But two, is you're also giving them gifts to help them get started out, because having a child is very expensive. You're going to need a lot of things you didn't previously need. Well, I think that, to your analogy, a startup is a lot the same way. If you're being an entrepreneur, you're getting a new endeavor going. It's one, it's expensive. Two, it's going to take a lot of time. And three, it's a lot of times requires, whether it's, hey, I need furniture for my office, or I need some or computer equipment, or I need X, Y, and Z, depending on the business. And to be able to have that or entrepreneurial shower, so to speak, is, I think, a fun idea. Now, also one question is, how do you know when the entrepreneurial, or when to have the entrepreneurial or shower? In other words, is it when you have the idea? Is it when you get the LLC formed? Is it when you have your first dollar in sales? Or how do you gauge what is the right time to celebrate for the shower?
Let's have one for all of them. No, I don't know. It could be any. It could be any. I guess like getting your LLC kind of makes it official, so that could be a good point to do it.
All right. Well, between the two of us, we're going to start doing entrepreneur showers. So if you form an LLC, reach out to Tom or reach out to me, and we'll show you or throw you a shower. Your gifts are probably going to be pretty small, but you'll still get something, or at least I'll give you something. I'm not going to speak too much for Tom, but I like the idea and I think it's fun. So, all right. Well, with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Awesome.